When I was 16, my parents had no qualms about referring to me as the family's mistake in front of their friends. With a laugh, my mom would point at me and say, "Birth control is only 99% effective. He's the 1%. That night, with just $40 and a backpack in hand, I walked out, leaving everything behind. Fast forward 6 years, and they finally tracked me down. Today, they appeared at my doorstep in tears, pleading with me to talk. I have my reasons to be cautious, to throw away the pain from the past. After all, 6 years of suppressed emotions tend to have a way of surfacing. I always knew I was far from being the family favorite. My brother, Morris, was the one they had planned for, one with the good grades and varsity jacket, the whole package. Me, according to my mom's dinner party jokes, I was the unfortunate result of trusting cheap pharmacy brand condoms. Funny, right? It was a joke she'd been cracking since I was 8. Growing up, I thought it was normal for your mom to use you as the punchline at gatherings, but over time, I learned to adapt. I mastered the art of smiling through the hurtful jabs. It felt like I had developed a thick emotional shell over the years. Whenever adults asked about my dreams for the future, my answer was always a deflection, a rehearsed line borrowed from my dad during one of his tipsy evenings. People thought I was quick-witted, but I was merely echoing the sarcastic banter that was a staple at home. The turning point came during my mom's birthday, not at the modest family dinner, where we sat in a run-of-the-mill restaurant with Dad grumbling about prices as he nursed his 4th scotch. I'm talking about a more important event, 2 days later, when my mom organized a dinner party for her collegiate elite circle she'd been hoping to join for years. Our house wasn't extravagant, but she transformed it into a Pinterest dreamscape, complete with new placemats, flickering candles, and the good china that was typically reserved for gathering dust. Dad was instructed to wear his one respectable button-up shirt, and he received a heartfelt plea to limit himself to fewer than 5 drinks. My brother Morris was given the make a good impression pep talk. As for me, silence, not even a hint to avoid shaming the family. Looking back, that should have been my first clue. The night began with me taking on the role of server because, for once, Michael decided to be useful. I made my way around the room, handing out appetizers while Mom spun tales about Morris and his potential baseball scholarship. Dad held himself together for the first hour, sipping slowly on his drink and nodding when it seemed appropriate, blending into the scene. I felt like a ghost, which, in gatherings like these, was the ideal scenario. Everything changed when someone brought up the topic of family planning or something along those lines. This woman, sporting a haircut that screamed "I want to speak to the manager," made a comment about how costly raising kids has become. That's when it happened. Mom, for glasses of white wine into the evening, gave me a look I recognized all too well, a look that said, "I've got a real zinger coming." As I cleared away the empty glasses, she aimed her finger right at me and announced, "Birth control's only 99% effective." Then, she paused for dramatic effect. "He's the 1%. The room erupted in laughter. Even Dad, who typically just drifted through these events, let out a deep, hearty laugh as if it were the most hilarious thing he'd ever heard. I stood there, clutching dirty glasses, as laughter erupted around me. Everyone found amusement in the fact that I was never meant to exist. Yet, not everyone joined in. Morris, my brother, didn't laugh. He simply stared at his plate, perhaps wishing he could vanish entirely. At least he had the decency to feel the shame that hung in the air. But the nightmare wasn't over. My mom, with her sharp words, continued, "We already have our perfect child," she said, nodding towards Morris. "And then there's Michael, our little family mishap." The room filled with more laughter, and I think it was my dad's boss who quipped, "Ouch. Bet that's gonna leave a mark," as if we were all stuck in some terrible sitcom. Despite the urge to shatter the glasses or scream out in frustration, I chose silence. I carefully placed the glasses on the table and quietly made my exit, heading upstairs to my room. No one even noticed. They were already chatting about someone's vacation in Cancun. As I sat on my bed, something within me shut down. It felt like a computer overloaded with too many tasks, forcing an emotional reboot. The world switched off, first to a screen of blue, and then to blackness. That night, I knew everything was about to change. I emptied my school backpack of all the textbook strigantry, exactly a survival skill when you don't have a home. Right. Instead, I carefully packed what really mattered: a couple of t-shirts, some jeans, underwear, a toothbrush, and the $40 in birthday money from Grandma that I'd been squirreling away for the latest video game. I tossed in my phone charger and a few emergency protein bars for when Dad forgot grocery day. Morris appeared in the doorway as I was zipping up the bag. We didn't exchange many words. We didn't need to. He'd sensed the storm coming even before I had. Silently, he handed me $120 from his savings and his old phone still functional, though no longer part of our family plan. He promised to load $20 worth of prepaid minutes on it for me the next day, without making it feel like a charity handout. "They won't notice you're gone until tomorrow afternoon," he said. It wasn't accusatory or judgmental, just a statement of fact, like he was mentioning the forecast. The weight of his calm certainty almost made me reconsider, almost tempted me to unpack and pretend this was just another night. But deep down, I knew it was time to go. Always the family's punchline if that was my role. But as laughter trickled up from downstairs, accompanied by my mom's complaints about teenage attitude problems, I had enough. No more. That night, I waited until the clock struck midnight. The house was finally silent. Both Mom and Dad were asleep, courtesy of their respective wine and whiskey rituals. Morris had left his desk light on, our old childhood sign that the coast was clear for a snack raid. I slipped out without leaving a note. What could I say? "Thanks for making me feel like an unwelcome blight in what you call a perfect family for the past 16 years. The night air was chilly, a typical late October bite. I had no destination, but even the unknown felt more welcoming than staying behind. I walked and walked until I ended up at a 24-hour McDonald's. There, I used the Wi-Fi to figure out my next move, hoping for some clarity amid the chaos. I found myself on a Greyhound bus, heading to the neighboring city. It wasn't too far away, but felt like a world apart. The first week was brutal. I spent nights sleeping at the bus station, feeling more lost than ever. Eventually, I found a youth shelter that took me in for 2 weeks. During that time, I managed to land a dishwashing job at a rundown diner that didn't care about my age. They paid me under the table, and that was all I needed. Meanwhile, Morris and I kept in touch through a throwaway email we had set up. He told me that Mom had put on a show for the cameras when she reported me missing, tears and all. But as soon as the police left, she went back to calling me dramatic. Dad didn't help either, drinking away and saying I'd return the moment hunger hit. But I refused to go back no matter how intense the hunger cramps got, no matter how unnerving it was to sleep in a shelter with people shouting in their dreams, no matter how harsh December felt without a proper coat. Then, 2 months in, I met Ronnie. He discovered me catching a nap in the diner's break room when I should have been washing dishes. Instead of firing me, he asked the unexpected, why wasn't I in school? I ended up spilling my guts to him over some cold fries after we closed up shop. It turned out Ronnie, too, was juggling his own set of family issues. The stories were different, but the flavor of chaos was all too familiar. He gave me a lifeline with a job on renovation projects, cash under the table at first, and then legit once I snagged my GED at 17. He even offered his couch until I scraped together enough for an apartment that redefined dreary. Those initial 2 years were a whirlwind of 12-hour workdays, instant ramen, and nights passing out to free Wi-Fi fueled YouTube tutorials about taxes and credit scores. A social life, not even in the realm of possibility. Life was all about working, saving, and surviving. Meanwhile, Morris graduated and headed off to college 3 states away, a smart move on his part. We kept in touch through emails, though not as often. He was carving his path while I was busy building mine from the ground up. By year 3, I began to feel almost human again. I moved into a place without visible mold, enrolled in community college courses online, and even managed to go on a few dates. Some were even half decent. It felt like a turning point, a new chapter where life seemed a little less bleak. My parents, it took them nearly 5 months to accept that I wasn't coming back, no matter how much they expected me to. They eventually filed a missing persons report, but it didn't lead anywhere since I was out there, working hard and covering my bills under my real name. It seemed they didn't want to dig deep enough to face their mistake. A family friend, Morris, let it slip that by my 17th birthday, my parents had already converted my old room into a home gym, as if erasing me was that easy. My dad claimed my cherished baseball card collection that actually held some value. Meanwhile, Mom spun a tale for the neighbors, saying I was sent off to a special boarding school for troubled teens. That's when my mindset shifted. It wasn't just about escape anymore. It became about transformation, about becoming someone they would desperately wish they hadn't pushed away. I decided to stop being consumed by anger all the time. Anger only burns up energy that could be better spent climbing towards something better. Instead, I grew cold, calculating. I started focusing on money not just as a means of survival, but as a tool of empowerment. Every paycheck, every in my online courses, every new skill I mastered was another stone in the wall built between myself and the memory of standing at that dinner table, bearing dirty glasses while everyone else laughed. Now, 6 years have passed, and I'm building a life that warms my heart while the memory of their indifference only fuels my drive. I'm 22 years old, thriving in a life I've built for myself. I have a cozy place to call my own and a hand-picked family of friends who genuinely care about me. Morris is the only person who knows my whereabouts, and he's promised to keep it a secret, or at least he did. That was until last week when he reached out to warn me that our parents have been frantically searching for me. Apparently, they need something now. It seems like the Bank of Karma has finally caught up with them. And guess what? I'm the unexpected collections agent here to settle the score. The interest on emotional debts has a way of adding up rapidly. Believe me, first things first, I was blown away by the response to my previous post. Thank you for all the validation. It's a relief to know I'm not the irrational one in this saga. For those asking if this is real, yes, it's unfortunately all too true. Some details have been altered for obvious reasons, but the core story is my life here reality I sometimes wish I could rewrite. Picking up where I left off, those first 2 years after leaving were all about survival. I juggled double shifts, ate my fair share of bargain ramen, and slept on a mattress I rescued from next to a dumpster. Don't judge, sanitized it thoroughly, I promise. Each day was a step toward independence and the recognition that I could make it on my own. I'd head to the public library to check my email, where Morris would send updates about what was happening back home. Apparently, when I disappeared, Mom and Dad spent about 3 weeks searching for me. Mom's idea of searching involved posting a few melodramatic updates on Facebook featuring my school photo, soaking in the sympathy reacts from her friends. Dad, on the other hand, made the grand gesture of calling exactly 2 of my friends. That was the full scale of their efforts to find their missing child. By the 4th month, Morris sent me a screenshot of a new Facebook update from Mom. She announced that they'd transformed my bedroom into her long-dreamt-of home gym, complete with a budget Peloton imitation and those decorative weights nobody ever actually touches. The caption read, "Making lemonade from life's lemons." Blessed Fitmum, that post got way more attention than the one saying I was missing. Just let that reality sink in. By the 3rd year away, I finally scraped together enough money to start taking some community college classes. Nothing fancy in-person classes were out of the question. These were the affordable online ones you squeeze in after an exhausting day of work. My back ached from hunching over my laptop at the kitchen counter, which had become my makeshift workspace. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I first encountered a sense of cherished admiration while sitting on 2 milk crates. But this time, the pain felt different, almost like it was driving me towards something better. I was studying business and finance, not out of a love for numbers, but because I realized that money is essentially math, and math doesn't discriminate or care about your background. During an online study group, I met Zoe. She messaged me privately after I'd corrected her Excel formula in a group project. From that moment on, our video chats were filled with discussions about assignments, and then gradually about everything else under the sun. Zoe was exceptionally smart, juggling her studies for a paralegal certification while working at a law office. The first time we met in person was at a rather gloomy coffee shop that was equidistant from our apartments. I was so nervous, wearing my only decent shirt, which inconveniently had a small pasta sauce stain that I tried to obscure with a pen. Zoe arrived, her hair casually tied up in a messy bun, glasses resting on her nose, and a smile that made me forget all about being the so-called family disappointment, if only for a few precious hours. That night, I opened up to her about everything, fully expecting her to run for the hills. Instead, her expression changed not to one of pity, but to something colder and more profound. She shared her painful experiences with her toxic mom, who used her as an emotional punching bag, a sentiment that resonated deeply with my own story. We were like two sides of the same coin, molded by different shades of the same damage. But then, Zoe came into my life and transformed my outlook completely. She had this incredible gift for seeing opportunity where I only saw survival. We'd spend evenings sprawled out on my floor with takeout, flipping through property listings and casually critiquing the market. The value on that building is completely wrong given the neighborhood's growth, we declare, lost in dreams of future investments. Back home, Morris kept me in the loop. Dad's drinking spiraled, he lost his job, and Mom hit a social ceiling once her upscale friends realized she couldn't keep pace financially. Their credit card debt was mounting, and they'd refinanced the house twice. On a brighter note, Morris graduated and left for a promising job. Smart kid. He was the only one who knew the city I moved to, though my exact location remained a secret. We had a code. If he ever texted Blue Waffle, a silly old joke from the internet, it meant our parents had somehow tracked me down. By year 4, I finally felt like I was gaining ground. Two promotions at work moved me up the ladder, and I relocated to a blissfully peaceful apartment, no more neighbors yelling at odd hours. It was a new chapter, and I felt ready to embrace it. I embarked on my financial journey by starting with a secured credit card, a small step that felt monumental. It was a collection of small victories that seemed immense. I became completely absorbed in the world of personal finance, diving into forums and online videos, learning everything I could about investment accounts, compound interest, and building credit. Every dollar I managed to save felt like another brick laid in the wall of independence from my parents. When Zoe moved in at the start of year 5, it marked a new chapter. Our home was modest, just a simple one-bedroom apartment with working appliances and a reliable shower. But it was our sanctuary where we could make plans for a future built on our terms. There we were, sitting on our well-worn, second-hand couch, enjoying budget-friendly stir-fry while mapping out our financial goals with the same enthusiasm most couples reserve for wedding planning. Then came the call from Morris, chattering our piece. Unlike our usual texts, hearing his voice immediately raised red flags. He revealed that my parents had lost their home. Not quite overnight, they were in pre-foreclosure, but the bank was looming. Years of refinancing, missed payments, and my dad's risky business ventures had finally caught up with them. With only 90 days before eviction, they suddenly remembered I existed. It was as if they cast out a distress signal. My mom posting old baby photos on social media with captions like, "Missing my baby boy every day. Please share to help us find Michael." It was a surreal plea that turned my world upside down. #missingson. Come back home. Funny how she didn't bother posting that picture when I truly was missing. The comments, though, absolute gems. I thought he was at boarding school. Didn't you say he joined the military? The best one. Isn't that the room you converted into a gym? Meanwhile, Dad found solace in Facebook groups for parents of estranged kids, painting himself as this heartbroken father yearning for reconciliation. Morris mentioned he even stayed sober for about 3 weeks before relapsing. I soaked in all of this from afar, thanks to Morris's updates and occasional social media snooping. Inside me, something icy was forming a calculated storm, not just mere anger. Zoe noticed the change. During dinner, she'd catch me lost in my thoughts, crunching numbers in my mind. She didn't discourage my plans. Instead, she helped sharpen them. I had been diligently saving and investing, living frugally to build a modest portfolio. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to make some significant moves. With Zoe's expertise as a paralegal guiding me through the intricacies of the legal landscape, we devised a bold plan. I approached the bank managing my parents' mortgage under an alias. Zoe set up an LLC, and I expressed interest in buying distressed properties in their area. I made a strategic offer on their specific loan. Banks are indifferent to who takes over the debt, as long as they receive their payment. After 3 weeks and a mountain of paperwork, I became the owner of my parents' mortgage. Unbeknownst to them, they now owe me for the very roof over their heads. I didn't foreclose right away. I wanted them to discover the truth on their own, to come to me for help, unaware that their financial destiny was in my hands. Zoe called it poetic justice. I saw it as settling the score. Meanwhile, my mom was growing increasingly desperate on social media, launching a heartfelt campaign to find me. Her posts gained traction in a local Facebook group in their town, captivating everyone with what appeared to be a touching family reunion story. Little did they know the real story behind the scenes. The error, however, happened 6 months ago. Morris came over for the weekend, and we decided to hit up this cool local restaurant, known for its eye-catching mural that practically shouted out where we were. Morris snapped a quick Instagram story, capturing the moment against the backdrop of that distinctive mural, but not long after, he deleted it. Unfortunately, our mom had already spotted it, and the digital chaos began. Morris's phone started buzzing nonstop, and he showed me with a sigh the 27 unread messages from Mom. Each one was some variation of "Is that Michael?" and "Where are you?" In a fit of exasperation mixed with humor, Morris shot off the infamous blue waffle emergency text that night. We laughed, joking about how impossible it would be for anyone to track me down in a city of 2 million people just from one mural. But we underestimated desperation's power. 2 weeks ago, Morris called me with an update that was both unsettling and impressive. Mom had infiltrated every Facebook group in our city, plastered my high school photo all over with a sob story about our supposed tragic separation. And just last week, my neighbor across the hall mentioned that someone was asking around for me. When he showed me the screenshot, it turned out Mom had discovered our apartment complex's community page and was messaging the residents. That very day, I didn't hesitate, changed our locks. A part of me was tempted to escape once more, to begin again in a new place, but Zoe's words grounded me. The house they once called home was now in my hands. I held the power, and perhaps it was time to use it. Just 3 days ago, everything changed. I was in the middle of working from home when the doorbell rang. I glanced at my phone to check the security camera feed. Thank goodness for affordable smart home technology. There they were, me Mom and Dad, standing at my doorstep. They seemed older and more worn down than I remembered. Dad had lost weight, while Mom had gained some. Both appeared as if they hadn't slept in days. Dad fidgeted anxiously, as if craving a drink, while Mom clutched her purse like it held her very last ounce of dignity. I stayed silent, watching as they pressed the buzzer 3 more times. Eventually, they left, leaving behind a handwritten note begging me to get in touch about a pressing family matter. Later that night, Morris called to confirm what I had already suspected. They were here because of the house. They needed money. They needed the consequences of their own mistake to rescue them. For 2 intense days, I prepped alongside Zoe collecting documents, rehearsing my words, planning how to stay composed. determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing the wounded child they had abandoned. Then, just yesterday, the buzzer echoed through my home. The camera revealed the same anxious faces, full of desperation. This time, though, I let them in. 6 long years of silence were about to shatter, and they had no clue what awaited them beyond my door. I was the so-called mistake they once snickered about. Now, I owned their home. Memories, like financial debts, accrue interest over time. As I buzzed them in, my hands trembled in it from fear, but with an edgy energy that felt like the rush from downing 3 energy drinks on an empty stomach. It was that strange, electric sensation when your body can't decide if it's thrilled or on the verge of a meltdown. For years, I'd crafted this moment in my mind, perfected my words, practiced my expressions in the mirror like some method actor gone rogue. But as soon as their knock echoed through my hallway, every meticulously rehearsed line vanished from my mind. As we squeezed hands before heading to the bedroom, we'd agreed she'd remain out of sight at first. This initial encounter was just between me and them. Opening that door felt surreal, like those bizarre dreams where you find yourself back in high school, underdressed, but, in my case, I was fully clothed, and they were the ones emotionally exposed. My mom seemed smaller, somehow diminished. Her hair, once salon perfect, was now box-dyed, and her designer purse had been swapped for something from a discount store. My dad appeared to have aged to decades. The alcohol-induced puffiness was gone, but so was the vitality. His face seemed to sink inward, skin sagging where the fullness used to be. For a tense 10 seconds, no one said a word. Then my mom made an odd choking sound and reached out to hug me, but I stepped back, and the rejection hit her like a physical blow. My dad just stood there, his eyes scanning the apartment, noting the decent furniture, the smart to prove that we weren't living in squalor because of his mistakes. As I'd anticipated, tears began to stream down Mom's face almost immediately. Emotional manipulation was always her native tongue. Dad made a weak attempt at preserving his dignity by asking if they could come in to talk. I let them in, but didn't bother with the niceties of offering drinks or seats. Instead, I watched them stand awkwardly in my living room like unwelcome door-to-door salespeople. Mom kept insisting she couldn't believe she'd finally found me, recounting how she'd never stopped searching, how many nights she'd cried herself to sleep worrying about my safety. Dad just nodded in agreement, like some kind of bobblehead doll. Funny how they didn't mention the home gym that used to be my room. Amazing how those details conveniently slip the mind when you are in need. I finally asked why they were here, not what they wanted to talk about, but why they were standing in my home after 6 years of silence. That's when the flimsy facade shattered. Mom's crocodile tears dried up instantly, and Dad's shoulders sagged even more. They exchanged a look I recognized all too well from my childhood, the same look they shared when the credit card got declined at the checkout line. And there it waist-higher desperate truth. They were about to lose the house. The bank was coming for their house, and desperation was setting in. They tried everything: loan modifications, refinancing, even setting up a GoFund that only managed to scrape together $87 from weary relatives who'd had enough of their financial crises. They desperately needed a place to stay, funds to get by, and, most dishearteningly, a realization of the mess they'd created. Curiously, I asked them why they hadn't turned to Morris for help. A wave of discomfort washed over the room as they shifted in their seats. It turned out they had already gone to Morris. 6 months ago, he had loaned them $3. Money he couldn't truly spare as a recent graduate burdened with student loans himself. They'd blown through it in mere weeks and had the audacity to ask for more. Understandably, Morris had drawn the line, setting much-needed boundaries. So here they were, looking down their list of options, and now it was my turn. As they sat across from me, the most unsettling transformation occurred. They shifted from a facade of despair to one of calculated interest. I caught them subtly eyeing my furniture, mentally appraising its worth, and then my dad chimed in with casual inquiries about my job and income, as if subtly gauging my ability to play savior in their story. They were assessing how much they could take from me. I told them I needed some time to think it over. Mom jumped in immediately, pressuring me with the fact they only had weeks before they'd face eviction. Dad chimed in, saying they would need at least $10,000 to secure a new place, not to mention the extra help needed for the deposit. The list of demands seemed to grow with each passing minute. After 20 minutes of this, I escorted them to the door, promising I'd call the next day. As they left, Mom tried to guilt-trip me, complaining that I hadn't hugged them or said a proper goodbye. It was as if they expected everything to be normal, despite the fact they had left a 16-year-old homeless and ignored him for years. The moment they exited, I had a minor meltdown right there in the kitchen. Zoe found me sitting on the floor, caught between laughter and tears. Not exactly my finest hour. She didn't try to mend it. Instead, she just sat down beside me and waited for the storm to pass. That night, we solidified our next move. The following day, I gave them a call and invited them to dinner. Not at our place, though we arranged to meet at a mid-range restaurant where I had reserved a private room. They accepted the invitation suspiciously fast. When they arrived, they were surprised to see not just me, but also Zoe and Morris, who had flown in that morning. Ronnie, who's truly part of my family, stood beside me, as did the rest who had always been there when it counted. The stunned look on Mom's face when she realized this wasn't an intimate cash handover was utterly priceless. Dad seemed like he was contemplating whether to order a double whiskey, uncertain if I'd be footing the bill. Once everyone was seated, I arranged for drinks and prepared to share what I had to say. Their expression shifted from perplexity to anticipation as I revealed that I was aware of their looming mortgage troubles. They likely thought I was about to offer some lifeline. Instead, I placed a folder on the table. Inside there were mortgage documents showing that, through my LLC, I was now the one holding their debt. Their home was, technically, mine. Mom's face turned as white as a sheet, while Dad flushed a deep red. Morris averted his gaze, stifling a grin behind his water glass, and Zoe scrutinized them with an icy, analytical gaze, as though she were observing specimens under a microscope. With a cool and clear voice, I laid out their options. I could begin foreclosure proceedings without delay, propose a grueling payment plan they couldn't afford, or allow them to stay as tenants, albeit under strict conditions. And here was the real twist. I had an option. I could transfer ownership of the house to them with no strings attached, if they fulfilled a few conditions. First, they needed to publicly acknowledge how they had treated Minna just to our family, but also to their friends, neighbors, and anyone who once laughed at the 1% joke. They all needed to hear the truth about what happened afterward. Second, they must agree to attend family counseling sessions with me and Morris. This wasn't about repairing our relationship. It was about having a professional witness how their behavior had impacted their children. Third, they would need to sign a legally binding agreement promising to never ask me for financial assistance again. My mom started to cry, genuinely shocked and with no audience to perform for this time. Dad stared at the documents as if they were written in some ancient, indecipherable language. Morris finally spoke up, telling them they should feel grateful that I was being more than fair considering everything they'd done. He had seen me build my life from the ground up while they had replaced my presence with exercise equipment. The dinner was painfully awkward. Mom swung between defensive anger and manipulative sobbing. Dad mostly sat there in silence, utterly stunned, except for one brief moment when he asked if I had done all this just to hurt them. I firmly told him no. I had done what I did to keep the books balanced, but they cast me aside when I no longer had anything to offer them. Now, they intended to treat me like an ATM whenever they needed something, completely disregarding the essence of family and fairness. Unsurprisingly, they left, unwilling to meet my conditions. I gave them 48 hours to make a decision. Those 2 days felt bizarre, a mix of empowerment and emptiness swirling within me. Zoe would constantly check in, offering me tea that sat untouched, her quiet company a comfort as I gazed aimlessly into space. Meanwhile, Morris remained on our couch, serving as a buffer to fend off any surprise parental visits. As the deadline approached, they returned, the weight of defeat visible in their posture. They had accepted my conditions not from a place of understanding their missteps, but simply because they had no other choice. The paperwork was signed with little fanfare, witnessed by Zoe's colleague, a notary, ensuring everything was above board. In the days that followed, the aftermath proved to be a tangled web of emotions and complexities. So far, they've been true to their word, likely because they know I've kept copies of everything and could pursue legal action if needed. My mom took to Facebook with a lengthy apology that somehow portrayed her as the victim, wrapped up in self-pity. Meanwhile, Dad's called twice, and each time we trudged through awkward conversations as he tried to gauge whether I'm still angry. Morris went back home yesterday, but before he left, he gave me a long, reassuring hug, telling me he was proud of me for doing what he never had the courage to do. I held them accountable. Is this revenge? Maybe, but it feels more like setting the record straight, like righting a 22-year-old wrong. Am I happy? Not quite. I'd say I feel satisfied. The anger hasn't entirely disappeared, but its transformed no longer a burning coal in my chest, but a scar that has finally healed. Last night, as Zoe and I lay in bed discussing the future, we found ourselves dreaming about adopting a dog or saving up for a house of our own, just the usual, everyday plans that couples make. She asked me if there was anything I wished I hadn't done, and I took a moment to reflect. My thoughts drifted back to when I was just a 16-year-old with only $40 stuffed in a backpack. I remembered the countless nights I went to bed hungry and the exhausting double shifts I powered through, even when I was sick, because there was no safety net waiting to catch me. Yet as I thought about it all, I realized how those tough times had shaped the person I am today. I started from scratch and built something meaningful, discovering people along the way who truly appreciated me. So I looked at her and said, "No, I don't regret any of it. I didn't regret leaving everything behind, pushing through the struggles, or even pursuing a bit of revenge. Sometimes, the decisions you think might be mistakes turn out to be the best choices of your life. Being part of the 1% isn't just about achieving success. It's about defying the odds and coming out stronger on the other side."